And on today's show, how to use a tactical pressure test and financial planning process. Part 2 of this week's series on building out your business with practice development strategies with nationally recognized author, platform speaker, and personal coach, Anthony Morris. Hi everyone, I'm Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and contributing author to INSMARK, Life Specs, and Backroom Technician. Let's get down to business. Well, welcome to day 2, Anthony.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for having me back.
I'm so glad to have you back. We're doing a whole series with Anthony all this week. If you don't know Anthony, he's a huge platform speaker. He's been at the biggest, largest places, 5 different continents, MDRT, Top of the Table, NAFA. I mean, you really get around, and really, people like you because you have a lot of ancillary parts of your skill sets, but content is the big one. And you really help us, you said this yesterday, disturb clients enough where they're going to say, I need to talk to that guy. I like that. Now, when we talk about the pressure test, I thought, first time I think of pressure test, I think my tires are low. I better go check my pressure. But when you talk about it, you have the 10-point system. We're going to spread that out between 2 segments today. Walk me through the pressure test and why is it so important for advisors to use it?
Well, first of all, the name is a little bit more intriguing, Steve, I think you'd agree, than the second opinion. Everyone's running around offering second opinions. Mm-hmm. I don't think anyone in America woke up this morning wanting a second opinion on anything. Mm-hmm. It's old, it's trite, it's tired. And so the concept of a 60-second pressure test, everybody's got 60 seconds to pressure test the financial plan that they have in place. So we developed a 10-point questionnaire. Most of these questions, most people who go through will fail the test. And it's something you can give to prospects. It's something that you can get clients to send when they're introducing you on referral by email or otherwise. It's a great seminar handout, lunch and learn. You can put it on your website. You can send it to tomorrow's prospect before the first meeting. And they're really 10 questions. So if we go through the questions, question 1, has a written financial plan been documented and updated at least annually? Steve, when I was at the NAFA National Meeting in Las Vegas, 2012, 3,500 people in the room, I asked that audience, how many of you have sat before a new prospect in the last 3 months? Of course, all the hands went up. I said, how many of you in the last 3 months have sat before a new prospect who's taken out an existing documented financial plan or strategy with graphs and charts looking at retirement planning, wealth creation, risk management, etc., and put that plan or strategy in front of you and said, here's my plan, Steve, tell me what you think. And in that NAFA audience of 3,500 people, 17 hands went up, Steve. So we know that this is a big disturber for people. Was the appropriate inflation indexing used? We know, Steve, that doctors, pills, hospitals, and Caribbean cruises and sponsoring your grandkids' ASU tuition have gone up by a lot more than 2 or 3% a year. Bread, butter, eggs, and milk go up by 2 or 3% a year. So senior inflation is the right inflation that needs to be used when indexing the plan. The third question, was the appropriate life expectancy used in creating and funding the plan? And good friend and colleague Tommy Hegner always talks about life expectancy as a midpoint. We know that. How lucky do you feel, Steve? You might be in the 50% that outlive life expectancy. So you've got to build a plan to, reasonably speaking, to age 100 for the people in their 60s today. Fourth point, have the long-term care expenses been accounted for by the plan in order to protect the children's retirement from the unfunded health issues of the parents? This is where I run into a challenge with some home office folks sometimes, is building a little bit of emotional language in there about not collapsing your children's planning. Mm-hmm. And fifth, does the plan contain the correct blend of mortality credits and guaranteed income paychecks and playchecks? Because really mortality credits are the things that insurance companies can offer and create, which banks can't and the stock market can't. And we know that investment companies can't by themselves as well. So those are really the first 5 points. I think it's fair to say that the majority of people don't know these answers, and that's the beginning of the engagement process. The great Ben Feldman taught us, if you ask the right question, you get to restrict and control the answers, which people actually have available. And that's not manipulative. That's just using the power of friendly persuasion to be able to move people's minds and hearts into problem-solving mode, which is what we need to do. And it's what we're paid for as professional advisors.
Now, I'm assuming, like in number 1, how many clients actually have an updated document or a financial plan at all?
Well, if you think about it, we are paid renewals, we are paid trail commissions for the delivery of ongoing service. And what shocks me, and it keeps me in business as a coach and speaker, obviously, is the fact that the majority of consumers out there don't have an updated, documented plan with the graphs and the charts and the science and the math, and it hasn't been reviewed every year during something called an annual review.
You also brought up the inflation issue. That's a big deal, and I don't understand why people don't incorporate it more.
Well, I was sitting just in LA recently with a fraternity brother of mine. I'm an Oregon Duck alumni, and he was telling me his kid's going to the University of Oregon, and he quoted how much he's paying for tuition each year and how much he has to shell out. And I was like, are you out of your mind? It was $1,500 back then. He looked at me and said, you're old. That was 30 years ago when we were at school. And I think about the tremendous pressure that people have by miscalculating what inflation is likely to be and what inflation is likely to do to your retirement plan long term.
And if you add that on top of another, what I would call a huge risk, life expectancy, especially when you're looking at mortality credits, and I would say most of our advisors who are more of a security bent will probably say, Steve, I really don't know nothing about mortality credits and its impact on a plan.
Well, we absolutely have to have them, because the reality is you need to be able to account for being able to earn more the longer that you live. And that's a reality. It's one of the cornerstones of planning today.
We come back from the break. We're going to go through number 6 through 10 of the pressure test and walk you through some of what I call disturbing questions that consumers really will pick up on and put you in front of them at the table. We'll be right back after the break. It's not how much money you make for your clients, it's how much money they get to keep, especially in retirement. But retirement income could cause Social Security benefits to be taxed. One tax advantage alternative is life insurance designed as a non-modified endowment contract that can generate tax-free income without taxing Social Security benefits. These contracts offer differing funding options depending upon your client's risk tolerance. For more information on how life insurance can be part of your retirement planning, just email me at steve@downtobusiness.tv. Brought to you by Ash Brokerage, the practice enhancement company. Well, welcome back to the second segment. Of course, I'm with Anthony Morris, and Anthony's walking us through. Before we get into the 6 through 10 pressure test, I want Anthony to walk through. He's giving away 6 different items right now, free for your viewership, for our viewership. Anthony, walk us through this.
Well, Steve, what we have is my monthly newsletter, and I have literally the say this, don't say that. And one of the things that I think keeps me busy as a coach and a speaker on platforms is I'm the guy who's going to give you the words. And our monthly newsletter is filled with the high voltage vocabulary of what you need to say to clients to befriend and intrigue and move them into your book of business. We've got 1 month's worth of free video sales tips, little 2 to 3 minute sales tips that you can use to intrigue and disturb more people. I've got a free ebook on using an estate directory to fill your calendar with prospects who write bigger checks. We've got a wonderful special report, also getting in front of more people, some 15 pages of strategy methodology there. We've got some discount vouchers, and we also have the 60-second pressure test, which people can use and download and use that property on their website and in their engagement process with clients.
Just write them right at the URL at the bottom of the screen, and we're happy to thank you very much for giving it all. That's all 6 giveaways. That's a lot of value. Let's talk about the pressure test now. Let's go through number 6 through 10. And these, again, are disturbing questions for consumers that will put them in front of you and position your practice, really, to be the person that's going to answer these questions for them.
Well, thank you, Steve. Point number 6, the lazy money. We all know that you can't get wealthy leaving your money in a retail bank. All you do is make bank shareholders wealthy. On every single comparison, if you'd bought that bank shares with $100,000 and reinvested all the distributions and the dividends back in that bank shares over the last decade, compared to if you'd had a fixed deposit money market or savings account, we know that there's a huge difference between the two. So the whole concept of correctly leveraging your lazy money is key during that red zone, the 5 years before and the 5 years after you retire, to do the right things with that money. The 7th point on the pressure test, what we call fully comprehensive disability and income protection benefits. Because, Steve, you can die or you can half die. And when you use that phrase, which I kind of invented, half die, people go, what's half dying? Well, Steve, your income died, but you didn't quite die. A lot of Americans believe that their biggest asset is their house, and it's not unless it's producing cash for you. Your biggest asset is what I call your PEP, your PEP, potential earning power. And you've got to ensure that potential earning power to beyond your retirement. What happens if you fall down the stairs and break your hip and need to be in a wheelchair when you're 79, 80, 83 years old and can't produce income anymore? So it's essential, if you insure your car fully comprehensive against fire, theft, and damage, that you insure your health and your income and your life the same way. So that's the key behind point 7. Point 8, Steve, are there estate plan distributions arranged with values guidelines? I think it's fair to say that the kids of today believe that there's an ATM machine in the basement that gets magically filled with cash by elves every day. They haven't grown up in a war where there was a shortage of sugar. The kids all want the latest iPhone. They want the latest gadgetry. And they don't necessarily have the values that come, or responsibilities that come with that money. So one of the things we're talking to clients more about today is bringing meaning to your money and having an estate plan that has some ropes and chains behind your money that actually controls the release of those assets and cash to your kids. Point number 9, has a family meeting been convened? And this, I believe, is one of the most neglected and explosive opportunities for client growth for our advisors watching your show, is how do you actually convene and facilitate that family meeting? And the great thing about facilitating family meetings is that the decisions that are taken around the table at the family meeting about mom and dad selling that lazy lot that they've got at the side of the lake, which doesn't have a cabin on it right now, and they thought they'd leave that half-acre lot to the kids. The kids don't want the lot. The kids are going to auction the lot right after dad's funeral. Why aren't we taking those real estate assets and annuitizing them and creating future income flows or life insurance for the next generation of people? So family meetings are a very big part of the planning process. You get to meet brothers and sisters and moms and dads in a very, very emotionally charged but correctly facilitated, very focused and profitable, quite frankly, opportunity for the advisor. And it leads to multiple meetings with accountants and attorneys because of the work that gets created. And then in estate directory, the question, Steve, is do you have all of your records in one place where your family would be able to easily access them in that fireproof safe or that bank safety deposit box to smoothly transition your life if you weren't with us and didn't make it home from movies last night? So that's an important tool for people to use.
Now, out of these 5, I'd have to say, and I think we're going to do this, Anthony, we're going to do a whole show on the whole family meeting. If a person hears this and says, that's unique, I would like to do that, but I don't even know how to facilitate it. I don't know what the rules of engagement are. What is some of the basics of that issue? Because I think that's a big one that's going to be popular with our advisors.
Well, there's a book that's been written, I have no commercial interest in the book whatsoever, called Estate Planning Through Family Meetings Without Breaking Up the Family, written by Lynn Butler, a Canadian lawyer. I would never be on an American show and recommend a book that talks about Canadian trust law. It's universal for advisors, and it really steps you through the checklists and agendas which you need, the questions you should raise in a family meeting. Great prospecting tool for people to use to give to clients, to disturb them into, have you confronted these issues as a family? You know, Steve, because we have 10,000 people turning 65 every day for the next 17 or 18 years, we hear these statistics from all the gurus and experts all the time. This becomes a really important part of planning. The question is, to what degree can your parents' expiry date or incorrect expiry date collapse your current retirement plan? And I'm not so sure that enough of our companies and trainers out there are talking about your parents being the 7th step in the financial planning process to ensure that your parents' plan doesn't collapse your plan. Because you can lose a lot of money from age 65 to 75 if you're cutting a check for $100,000 a year for mom's nurse instead of your kid's ASU tuition. And it might come down to some of those tough choices.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Remember, before moving forward with any of the ideas on our show, always consult your tax advisor, legal counsel, or your broker-dealer compliance department. Missed an episode? Just hop out to our video archives. And remember, you could be wiser as an educated advisor. I'm Steve Savant. We'll see you tomorrow.